to the cloud. Boom, we are recording. Welcome everyone to today's session on the hot topics, the best of confirmation class. Why should the kids get all of the great topics? We are going to be doing today's topic, which was addressed in our confirmation class 2 years ago in a special session of students and parents together. It turned out to be very interesting to have students and parents together because what we discovered is at the end of the session, when we were discussing one particular component of the moral struggle of how to design autonomous cars, actually the parents and the kids disagreed fundamentally on one moral supposition. And shockingly, there was nothing about it that would suggest people of this generation and this generation would feel differently, but almost all of the parents felt one way and all of the kids felt another way. I don't know why. I've got my theories, but we will address that at the end of our session today. First, a word about autonomous cars. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when autonomous cars can unavoidably what cannot avoid a collision, cannot avoid hitting someone. But lest we focus too much on autonomous cars hitting things, I want to make this disclaimer and very important statement. Autonomous cars don't hit things. That's the beauty of autonomous cars. They are much more safe than human drivers. Autonomous cars are so much safer for a number of reasons. One, they don't text or fix their makeup or get into a fight with their girlfriend while driving. They don't drink. They don't get distracted. Autonomous cars are 100%. That's my own phone. So it's Mona. Should I get it? She's probably wondering how to get on, but I can't get it. She's going to have to call the temple. Or maybe she's calling Elaine. So autonomous cars, where were we? First of all, they're never distracted, and the vast majority of lives will be saved that way. Autonomous cars are always paying attention, but not only that, they have super fast instincts. They can see when, the car in front of them is braking, boom, they brake instantly. Even if we're alert, we're not as good as an autonomous car. And finally, in the future, and even not even too long in the future, they will be in communication with the cars ahead of them. So they will know things that they can't even see or we couldn't see. Autonomous cars in our future is going to be much safer. So I just wanted to, now we're going to spend an hour talking about autonomous cars crashing, not get you afraid of autonomous cars, because autonomous cars will sometimes make a mistake. They might confuse something in the road that, for a human being or something. So there might be an instance where autonomous car will cause an accident that a human wouldn't have done, but there will be 1,000 examples on the other side where autonomous car would have saved lives. Autonomous cars we want to embrace for their safety. Now let's talk about when unavoidably they're going to hit something. Before we do though, and our ultimate goal is to figure out how to program an autonomous car in the most moral and ethical way. And as those of you who've been here for our previous 4 sessions know, we look to Jewish tradition, to the Torah, to the Talmud, to medieval commentators, to modern rabbis, to give us guidance on these issues. Today, we're only going to look at 2 texts, and both of them are from the Talmud. Or wait, maybe one of them is Mishnah. Both of them are from the Talmud, I believe. But we still do the blessing for Torah study. So Torah has many meanings in Jewish tradition. Most literally, Torah means like instruction or law. Torah can also mean the first 5 books of the Bible, or the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses. But Torah can also mean more broadly any Jewish learning involving law, morality, values. That is all called Torah generally. So Talmud is Torah, Midrash is Torah. It's all considered part of the greater understanding of what is Torah. So today we're going to begin, as we have before, with the blessing for Torah study. Even though we are not literally studying words of the Pentateuch, we are studying Torah in its broader sense, and so this is still the appropriate blessing to say. Allow me to share the screen. Where am I? Boom. Whoops. Let me get us to the beginning here. All right, the ethics of self-driving cars. Look, here's some self-driving cars. They got the gizmos on top with the cameras pointing in every direction, and you know, so they can see everything. Here is our Torah blessing. Go ahead and say it out loud with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And in English, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with the commandments and commands us to engage in words of Torah. Friends, I said we're only studying 2 texts today. I mean, a couple days ago with abortion, I think we studied 20 texts. This is going to be much lighter text and heavier on the discussion, but we're going to start right away with a doozy. This is from the Talmud. 1 minute, I'm going to scroll up because I don't want you to read it yet. I want to tell you about Rava first, okay? So Rava is new to our sessions in that we haven't spoken of Rava yet. Rava is about 4th century rabbi, and Rava is one of the 10. I've been telling you all along, you know, if we're gonna, you should know who the 10 most important rabbis of our people are, and Rava is one of them. The hint that you have that Rava is one of the most important rabbis, not just of his generation, but of all time, is his name. He wasn't born Rava. Rava is his nickname. Rava means the great one. So look, that kind of gives it away. They don't just call anybody the great one. And Rava means like the rabbi's rabbi, the grand one. And Rava is a very influential and important rabbi, especially as Judaism was developing. The interesting thing I find about Rava is how his minority views become very important in Jewish tradition because he said them. And that's one of the things I like most about Rava and really about Judaism is the respect for the minority and the respect for great learning, even if others differ. Even if you don't come on the winning end of an argument, it doesn't mean that your argument didn't have merit. And that is often illustrated by Rava. Rava is going to address an important topic on the issue of the relative value of human life. Now, we all know that human life is the end-all, be-all in Jewish tradition. Pikuach nefesh, saving a life, overrides 610 of the 613 commandments. You know, you can violate, you can eat on Yom Kippur like we saw earlier this week. You can light a fire on Shabbat. And you can do all kinds. You violate 610 of the 613 commandments in order to save a human life. Human life is primary, pikuach nefesh, to save a life, because our rabbis teach to save one life is to save an entire world. The world of that person, the world of those who love that person, the world of descendants that may come from that person. To save one life is to save a whole world. But the question now that Rava is going to address is the relative value of different lives. I said that you can violate 610 of the 613 commandments. And so immediately you're thinking, well, what are the 3 that you can't violate in order to save a human life? Rava will tell you right here, one of them: murder. You cannot commit murder in order to save a human life. Now, we're not talking about times of war or various things that suspend normal ethical rules. Times of war have their own reasoning and logic and ethics that are separate. We're just talking about day-to-day life. You cannot murder one to save another. The example that I like to give to the kids in the confirmation class, and usually, I will pick up some volunteers and say, and assume one of them needs a new heart in order to live. I can't take the heart of this other student volunteer to save that person's life. Even though saving their life is primary, it's only, you can't murder in order to save a life. And where does that doctrine in Judaism come from? It comes from Rava. Rava was asked a she'ela, a question that comes with a responsum, a teshuva, an answer. Now, one of the ways you know that a rabbi is a great rabbi is who's asking this rabbi questions. Historians look at the responsa literature, which is letters written to great rabbis by other rabbis asking for help on a ruling. And when you look to see if you think someone's a great rabbi, but they're asking a different rabbi a question for help, then you're like, oh, well, that's not the most important rabbi of that generation, then this one is. All letters went to Rava. Rava is the ultimate rabbi's rabbi. Everybody was asking him his opinion on the great conundrums. So here is a passage from Talmud, Pesachim 25b. Talmud is the Babylonian Talmud. There was another Talmud called the Palestinian Talmud that was written in, in the land of Palestine, mostly in Tiberias, even though it's called the Jerusalem Talmud, but that's neither here nor there. But when you just say Talmud, it was written in Babylon, 4th to 6th century. Pesachim is the tractate. There are a number of tractates. 25 is the page, or 25b. Every page would have an A side and a B side. And when it was printed, originally the Talmud didn't have these page numbers. It wasn't until publishing came along in Vilna that the page numbers, as we know the Talmud as of now, in this way was used. So when you're looking at Talmud Pesachim 25b, we're looking at the tractate of the Babylonian Talmud called Pesachim, written 4th to 6th century, and we're looking at page 25b. So you'll notice that I'm being a devious pedagogue in that while we're supposed to be talking about autonomous cars, I'm really teaching you Talmud. A man once came to Rava and said to him, "The governor of my town has ordered me to kill someone, and if I refuse, he will have me killed. What should I do?" Rava says, "Be killed. Do you think your blood is redder than that other man? Perhaps his blood is redder than yours." Friends, I'm going to open up the floor for questions in just a moment, but I want to just reflect generally on the phrasing that Rava says. Do you think your blood is redder than that other man? Well, that's a strange way of phrasing it. It must have been some idiom, like you think. I was about to think of an English idiom that's kind of off color, but it's like someone saying that their blank doesn't stink. It doesn't mean that they literally think that their blank doesn't stink. It just means that, it's just an idiom. That your blood is redder than his doesn't mean you think literally or something, or it just means that, like, is your blood somehow more precious than that man's blood? Or somehow are you better or more worthy than this other person? People are equal. You can't kill this other person to save your own life if that person's innocent. Obviously, if you are, self-defense is allowed in Judaism, not only self-defense, but if you see a pursuer threatening another person and the only way you have to stop them is to kill them, you are allowed to. So it's not to say that you can never kill another person. You can if they're a threat, if they're a murderer, if they're, but an innocent person, you cannot take their life because people are equal. And it's Rava's phrasing that is your blood redder than another, which will become a very important phrase. And subsequent generation of rabbis for the next 1800 years until this very day will continue to utilize that phrase shorthand to just mean all people are equal. So if it comes up in an ethical discussion among rabbis, even today, they will say, well, because, you can't do that because, who's to say his, your blood's redder than him, or whose blood is redder than another. And it comes up, in issues of the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, and their protocols, for, to have ethical positions, the phrase will come up that, no one's blood is redder than another. It became, I don't want to say like a mantra, but it became a shorthand for human equality. And it's all because Rava said it. Now, if you've never met Rava before, I'm glad you did today. I'm going to open up the floor to sharing. And you're welcome to write a chat, and also my friend and volunteer partner will be, I think I made him co-host. Let's see, yeah, Howard, your co-host, will be able to, read the chats or butt in, but anyone is welcome to unmute and ask a question or make a comment or insight. Marlies, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Why did Rava not inquire first about why he had to kill the man? Because if the governor said you have to kill him and it was an innocent man, yes.
I know. I wish it were a little more specific. I wish they said this is an innocent person. I wish they said, like, was it that the dictator was, capricious, so that we would know. But unfortunately, the text is kind of terse that way. My guess is that this was a completely hypothetical situation. I mean, it's such an absurd pretext. It was just a setup so that he could make the statement, which is a general statement that wanted to be made. So that's how I see it. But maybe it was an actual real situation. Just my gut, and I'm a suspicious person drilled into me by one particular history professor in college, which is just to question everything and assume everything is not true and didn't really happen. So that could just be my proclivity. But that's my assumption, is that it wasn't a real situation. Rini, go ahead and unmute yourself. And it says Bill, but that looks like Joanne Hybe. Just go ahead and ask your question.
Later on, we considered those who were from the upper echelon of society to be blue bloods. So there was a time when your blood made a difference.
And I wonder if it doesn't have, bloodlines, in, I don't want to say even modern, but even for centuries, English carries, bloodlines. Just our president said just earlier this week, spoke about someone coming from good bloodlines, and it, in a way that was really awkward in terms of suggesting that people of some races or classes have are somehow better. That's in English, blood conveying betterness. So I wonder if it was that the idiom, which I don't know because I don't speak ancient Aramaic and it's time to understand the idioms, but if blood being redder might suggest something that someone is of a better class or a better type of person, I don't know. But I do know what it's come to mean for the last 1800 years, which is to say all of our blood is equally red. We're all equal. And Joanne Hybe.
It seems to me that there are three people involved in this scenario. Why wouldn't you go for the governor? Seriously, I mean, he's instigating the murder.
I don't know, but the point is not the scenario. The point is the ruling that comes from it, which is you can't favor some human lives over another in Jewish law. And that will hold sway from that day forward. But we're going to get to some nuance on this, because when you get to philosophical conundrums, there's often a nuance. And when we get to Rabbi Akiva, we're going to see a nuance that's going to complicate this. But we're going to start with the assertion, the fundamental assertion in Jewish tradition, that all people are created equal. If there are other questions or comments, yes, Howie, go ahead. Whoops, and speak.
Well, I think it's well known that if somebody is cut, he bleeds red. So I think that's what it really means. If you're injured, everyone bleeds red.
I like it, Howie. Basically saying we're all the same on the inside. You know, someone might look different, tall, short, dark skin, light skin, but they all bleed red. And maybe it's a way of saying
we're all
the same on the inside. I like that. I had never thought of it that way. Maybe that's it.
I think it's wonderful. I think that I prefer that over the rabbi's commentary about blood being redder. You think your blood is redder? I think the analogy of if your blood, we all bleed red, really covers it very nicely.
Yeah. All right, then. If I don't see any other hands up or comments, so then we're going to go ahead and get to our next text, our second of two texts, which are going to talk about again, general moral questions before we start looking at the specifics of cars. So let's go here. Whoops, wrong thing. Sorry. Hit the wrong button. Kill or be killed. All right, next one. Now we're going to go to the Talmud, and I'm going to share with you the first half of a passage from the Talmud. I'm going to show you the first half, which proposes a conundrum. Then we're going to break into groups and discuss it, and then we'll come back and see how the rabbis responded to this conundrum that's posed in the Talmud. So this is called the water bottle dilemma. And whoops, what happened here? How did I lose? There we go. The water bottle dilemma. It comes from the Talmud, again, the Babylonian Talmud. This is a different tractate called Bava Metzia on page 62a. If two people were walking on a desolate path, and there was a jug of water in the possession of one of them, and the situation was such that if both drink from the jug, both will die, as there is not enough water. But if only one of them drinks, he will reach a settled area. There is a dispute among the rabbis as to the halakha. So let me state this again, maybe in some, paint the picture. So two guys go for a hike in the desert wilderness. They make a wrong turn. They go deep into the wilderness, and then they realize they had made the wrong turn. And now it's going to be, a huge walk ahead of them in the blazing sun. And one of them's got a canteen of water, enough for one person to survive this walk, and the other one has none. The question is, should the one with the canteen share the water, or should the one with the canteen keep the water, or give the water to the other fellow. But if they share the water, they will both die. There's not enough water to support two life forms here. Now, this very issue came up with NASA in a very famous incident that led to a famous movie starring Tom Hanks and made by Ron Howard, Apollo 13, right? Wasn't it 13? Apollo 13, but they were not running low on water. They did not have enough oxygen. If you recall, they had to take in one of the astronauts into their regular unit because of the malfunctioning, and that unit was only designed to have enough, I think, for 3, and now there were 4 or something. And the question they had to immediately come up with, on the ground in Houston is, should that 4th guy be allowed into the unit if it might kill, if they won't have enough oxygen for all of them. So this bizarre situation, this crazy hypothetical that the Talmud, presents could never possibly be, except it actually happened, that NASA faced this in the 60s. Was it the 60s? No, maybe it was early 70s when Apollo 13 happened. So here's the question. We're going to break into groups. And what I want you to think about is there's enough water to save 1 life, not 2, but there's 2 of you. The question I want to ask you, and for discussing your group, is what would you do if you had that water jug? 2, how would you feel if you were the one without? And 3, I'm going to throw in one that I just thought of. Should there be a rule on this? Like, should there be a basic understood moral practice so that if this ever comes up, you could just sort of lean on that and not have to be, burdened with this decision? So friends, we're going to break into groups. You're to talk about what would you do if you had the jug? What would you do if you were that other person without the jug? We're going to go into breakout rooms.
Rabbi, can I ask a quick clarification question?
Yes, Howard.
All creative options of sharing are not on the table. Or, so they may be.
No. It's if you start getting creative and say, well, no.
There are some creative things you could do. Right?
No, then we'll change the scenario to get rid of you can't get out of this scenario.
Okay.
Either both die.
So we can't do the Tom Hanks castaway thing, right? We can't.
No, you can't. No, there's no way around it.
Capturing rainwater, reusing. Okay.
No,
okay.
None of that.
Okay.
Okay, we're breaking into our rooms going now. All right, you're all been invited to the rooms. Go ahead and hit accept, or join rather, and we'll see you in the rooms. Hello, Sumner and Donna. Do you want to go into one of the breakout rooms? Go ahead and hit join. There you go.
We were muted.
Oh, we were muted. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi,
Hey,
Rabbi.
guys. It looks like we're mostly back. So let's go ahead and just mute yourselves again. And we're going to continue on in our discussion to look at what the Talmud said. So I did peek in on, I think, 4 of the 7 rooms and found some differing opinions. And wouldn't you know it? But that's what you find in the Talmud as well. It wasn't like all of our rabbis agreed on this. But you do find a transition that this used to be the majority opinion, and then this became the majority opinion. So the rabbis collectively, though they are never in unanimity, collectively, they flip on this question. Let us look at it. Boom, boom. All right, so now we're going back to Talmud Bava Metzia 62a, but now I'm going to give you the whole excerpt. If 2 people were walking on a desolate path and there was a jug of water in possession of one of them, the situation was such that they couldn't both drink from the jug, and both will die. There's not enough water, but if one of them drinks, that person will survive and reach a settled area. There's a dispute. Ben Patora taught, it is preferable that both of them drink and die, and let neither one of them see the death of the other. Ben Patora speaks of this noble approach where both of them sacrifice of their own lives to share the water, and in a spirit of camaraderie, Billy Joel saying, we'll all go down together. They're going to go down together. They're going to share the water, and it's better that they both die than one live and not share the water. This was the accepted opinion until Rabbi Akiva came and taught the verse from Leviticus 25:36. Now those of you who are in the Midrash class or have studied Talmud before know that oftentimes the rabbis will give a proof text. They will cite a verse of Torah that will hammer home and drive home the point. And sometimes they'll do a very creative and clever reading of that text. If you look at Leviticus 25:36, you would not think that it speaks on this topic. It says, and your brother shall live with you. Rabbi Akiva understands it to mean that your brother shall live. It's good. We want your brother to live with you. In other words, you first, and then let's worry about your brother. It indicates that your life takes precedent over the life of the other. It's Rabbi Akiva who wrote the instructions for plane travel that says, before assisting anyone with an oxygen mask, put on your own oxygen mask first. Now I know that that's not exactly, I'm being a little clever and tongue-in-cheek there, because you want to put on the oxygen, your own first, because you can put an oxygen mask on someone who's passed out and still revive them, no problem. You can't go the other way around. It's just practical sense. You put your own oxygen mask first and then assist others. I get it, but it's in a sense, that's what Rabbi Akiva is saying. The line says, and your brother shall live with you. He's saying, your brother, it's important. You want your brother to live with you. With you is the priority. And then you worry about your brother. You've got to take care of yourself first and then worry about your brother. Rabbi Akiva says, keep, you who have a canteen, you keep that canteen. So what we see in the Talmud is a flip in opinion. Ben Patora says, let's die together in this act of self sacrifice and nobility, whereas Rabbi Akiva will then turn and change it, and that becomes the accepted opinion, which is keep it. Two things I'd like to say about that before I open the floor to questions and comments. One is Rabbi Akiva's majority opinion, while it is speaking singularly to this particular issue, will become very much in the norm of general Jewish thinking on issues of ethics and just proper living, which is to favor moderation and to favor logic. The rabbis did not, although we see it in some extreme with the ultra-Orthodox today and some other cases, but in general, normative traditional Judaism has been very middle-of-the-road logic and has looked askance on extremism, asceticism, giving up all, earthly joys is not a Jewish value, solitary monastic life, not a Jewish value. You see in other religions, these acts of sort of extreme self-sacrifice and piety, which is really not part of normative traditional Judaism over the last 2,000 years. And so this is kind of in keeping in that. Jews being level-headed, logical. And our religion keeps coming back to that, hitting that note. And in that regard, Rabbi Akiva really does speak in a way that I would say is normative for Judaism in other, for this and other issues as well. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is it goes completely contrary to the biography of Rabbi Akiva as his life is described in the Talmud, because he famously was one of the 10 martyrs who gave of his own life, took on the risk of Roman persecution to keep the Torah alive, to keep teaching Judaism and Torah, and to keep ordaining rabbis when the Romans forbid it. And he was tortured and murdered publicly, executed by the Romans in Caesarea in the 2nd century. So though Akiva speaks against the self-sacrifice in his life, he actually lived otherwise. With that, I'm going to stop the share here and open the floor. If you have a question or comment, please go ahead and unmute, and then we're going to start looking at philosophy and then address the issue of self-driving cars. Helene, please.
It just seems to me that Rabbi Akiva's philosophy is very selfish. And I think if you're the kind of person who doesn't go for something like that, if you save yourself and then worry about your brother, and God forbid something happens to your brother, I think, you live with the consequences of that forever. And I don't agree.
But it's hard in this case. So let's say you give up the canteen, then you just passed the buck to your fellow who now has to live with the consequence of taking someone's
No, that's
canteen.
a good point. That's a good point.
And the other thing, and we're going to see this when we get to the trolley dilemma and we start looking at general philosophy, is the sense that the acts of omission and acts of commission, it's not, Akiva's not saying, only one can live, so let the one who didn't bring the canteen drink it. The sense is that the person with the canteen has water. That's sort of a natural state. They are destined to survive. Don't mess with that. Let that be. don't artificially insert yourself into this situation and thereby kill someone. Sharing the water kills someone who is not on a path of death. Well, the one without the canteen is on a path of death. I think that's, it is selfish, but on the other hand, it is saving a life, and it's saving the life of the one who brought the water, whose life was not threatened, other than the fact that they have a heart and they have a friend. Marlise.
Yeah, my question was, again, I get into details, but if one of them is younger, one of them is older, and one of them has children and the other one doesn't, and I think there are a lot of variables. Being older, I would say yes, the younger person should get it because he's creating children that can perform mitzvot, as you said the other day. So
Marlise, I'm going to cut you off here and just say that this was very well addressed, I thought, in the bioethics session. I think many in this room were attended that session with the rabbi and the bioethicist when talking about who gets a ventilator, who gets the hospital bed, who gets, the limited medication, and do you weigh life expectancy and age among those? Because bioethics doesn't necessarily say that everyone is equal. Do you favor a doctor who might save other lives? Do you favor a great person who is, whose life is, cared about by many? Or do you favor the young over the old? These things are pertinent. Interestingly, they did not come up in this case. They will come up elsewhere in the Talmud when it's talking about ransoming of hostages and making priorities of life in that regard. Rini, you had your hand up.
I brought up a scenario where they're identical twins, and that should complicate this. Who gets the water?
They're identical twins. You're right. Why not? Why make it easier on any of us? Actually, I like that because we're going to get to the Joanne McGuire. We're going to get to the trolley scenario, and then I will tell you about all of the different variations on this trolley scenario that various people have positive and posed and also put in front of target groups to see what people choose. So we're going to get to that, Rini, in just a minute. Joanne.
My question is, what happens if your brother doesn't agree with you?
Yeah. So you're there and say, no, I'm keeping the water. And he's like, give me the water. In that case, the one without the water would have to follow Rava's dictum, which is you can't take the water from the guy who has water to save your own life, because that would be murder. Because that person is not on a path of death. It would be murder if you took your fellow hiker's water. Is Joe Stone?
I think that Rabbi Akiva, in that first sentence, your brother will live with you. I think if you would just add within instead of with, I think what he was saying is you drink it and your brother will be with you always.
Oh, that's intense. All right, Susan, did you go ahead and unmute yourself?
I wasn't sure. Me, Susan?
Oh, Schlossberg.
Yes, okay. I had asked it in the chat. I noticed that the second text you put up came from Leviticus. And in Genesis, of course, it says, I am not my brother's keeper. So I'm wondering if that's where he kind of derived that answer from. Any idea?
Yeah, well, let me just clarify. The Torah, yeah, we are a brother's keeper. And there's 150 mitzvot in which we have to care for our fellow siblings. Know that this is an exceptional case in which one life has to be chosen from another, But, no, the Torah says you cannot stand idly by while your neighbor bleeds. The Torah says you have to share your food with those who are hungry. The Torah says you have to, protect and care for others who are vulnerable, whose life might be in danger. Yeah, we absolutely, everyone agrees we have an obligation to our neighbor. We are our brother's keeper and sisters, and our animals too, because we did have blessing the animals, and we did address that we are responsible for the well-being of our animals. Adrian Hutt.
Does it at all talk about anywhere about the expectations of the person who doesn't have the water? Would that person say, oh, well, I know that I don't have the water, so I'm the one, I'm going to go? Or would the expectations be that you are your brother's keeper, you will help me, you will value my life, my blood is as red as your blood? So is that discussed anywhere?
No, you have the excerpt that discusses it, that presents it to you. So no, it is not there, which brought up to my third question, which is, should we have a general rule? And I'm going to answer yes. That would be great, because it would be wonderful if the two of them knew about Akiva, so that the one with the canteen knew what to do, and the one without the canteen recognized that their friend's not being a jerk, but just following what the Talmud says ought to be done in this case. So I think it's helpful having a normative opinion, and we get that in the Talmud in this case. It is better to save one life than to nobly go down together. And in the case of Apollo 13, while they did find a workaround, like Howard Killman wanted us to do, they did find a workaround in Apollo 13, but ultimately, if they couldn't have found a workaround, you don't let 4 astronauts die because that one astronaut needed to join them. And that is how Akiva rules. I'm going to go now to our next slide. And we're going to get to the trolley problem. The trolley problem is famous. I imagine many in this room, or some in this room, have seen it before. It has been popular in some philosophical academic circles, or since the 60s. Here's the trolley problem in its most basic format, although there have been 100, I was trying to make it bigger and I made it disappear. There have been 100 derivations, and we'll talk about some of them. Here's the trolley problem. Here comes a trolley. It's cruising down a track and is heading straight toward 5 people who are standing in the track. There's some error, the trolleys run wild. These guys are, working on the track there. There's not supposed to be any trolleys. And you're here. You can't yell to them because they got jackhammers or something. They're doing their work. And they got headphones on, whatever it is, or they're far away. There's 5 guys here about to get killed by this trolley. But you're here, you see the trolley, you see the 5 guys, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can flip the switch and send the trolley on an alternate path where there's only one person there. And I have the ability to flip this switch and send the trolley to kill 1 instead of 5. The question is, what is the moral and proper thing for you to do in this situation? Do you flip the switch and spare 5 lives at the expense of 1, all innocent people? Or do you say, I can't take part and kill this innocent person? The trolley was destined to hit these 5 people. That would have been its fate. If I interfere, I am taking a human life. So the question to reflect on is, what would you do? And here I'm just going to give you this moment of silence. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you flip the switch? Next question. Actually, you know what? Let me go to this is the next question. Here is one variant. I call it the large man variant. It has been known for decades as the fat man variant, but you know, why can't he just be a large man? So here you are, there's no switch. You're on this bridge, you see the trolley coming, you can't yell to these 5 guys or people or a family of 5 or whoever these 5 innocent people are on the tracks. So you're desperately look around on the bridge for something large to throw onto the track and stop the trolley before it kills these 5 innocent people. You look on the bridge, there's nothing, there's nothing. You're looking for a sofa, you're looking for a big boulder, something to push and stop this trolley. There's nothing on the bridge except for one large man who is big enough to stop that trolley. Do you shove him off the bridge to save this 5? It's interesting to note that these 2 questions have been put by psychologists and philosophers into into academic settings in front of test groups and asked people for their opinion. And interestingly enough, while many would flip the switch and choose to actively participate in this to spare 5 and take 1, far, far, far fewer are willing to push 1 in harm's way in order to save 5. Why is that different? Why are people willing to flip a switch to kill 1 innocent person and spare 5 who would have otherwise been killed, but they're not willing to push a person and achieve effectively the same? This same trolley question has also been asked with, instead of anonymous silhouetted black figurines, but rather personalized. Let's say there's 5 Gentiles here and 1 Jew. Let's say it's 5 people you've never met before, and that is your blank. Your child, your spouse, your mom. That's someone that you know. Do you, and then finally, of course, is what if that person there is you? Do you, if you are this man or woman, it's a silhouette, it could be either. If you're this person, do you jump into the train to spare the others? So friends, we're gonna go back into our groups again, primarily to ask this question. Do you flip that switch or let it be? Do you flip the switch or let it be to spare the 5 and not the others? We're gonna go ahead and first thing I'm gonna do is unmute all and then go into our breakout.
Betty, they're all
Go ahead and hit join.
people, they said. And so they would give the jug to the other person. And
So I don't feel like it.
what are you gonna do?
Just
Go ahead and hit join there, Roz.
go ahead.
Andy, it's time for a breakout room if you want to hit join.
No, I didn't. Oh.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Alice.
Yes, Howard, we're
Hi,
all
guys.
agreed.
Are we all agreed? Yep.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, we agree.
We go with my creative approach.
I like it.
Creative.
Wave and
We
scream.
like it.
What was it?
Howard's
So
creative?
I'm the bad guy who sets up these scenarios where all these people get killed, and Howard's like, well, what we do is we call Superman, and he lifts up the trolley, and then Batman, sets the hook, and, just in time, Spider-Man, and no.
Magical
Is
thinking.
there anybody in the trolley? You didn't say, is there anybody in that trolley? Are there lives in the trolley?
Not that I know of, although I have seen one scenario
And
that said
I
that
think
the
it
trolley.
must have been a self-driven trolley.
All right, let's go to our next thing here. I'm going to just mute everybody again. You'll be able to mute yourself, but for now, you're all muted. Whoops, let me get rid of that. And let's get back to our trolleys. Large man variant, we're past that. Okay, now that we've discussed these issues, oh, by the way, before we go there, an issue came up where someone said, I totally get it. I would pull the switch, but I think it was Andy who said, I would pull the switch, but I wouldn't push the guy off the bridge. I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't, I don't remember, one of the groups said it. Well, it's interesting. One study on this issue kind of gives us a hint to the answer to that question, why we're likely or more likely to pull the switch, but not push the guy, even though they're effectively the same act. Because what they did is they took two groups and separated them. And one group got the large man variant and one group got the standard trolley car. But what they did is they hooked up brain imaging, to check what part of the brain is stimulated by this puzzle, by this conundrum. And what they found, I think, is our answer. So when it's a switch and you're removed from the situation, you're looking at it from afar, it stimulated one part of the brain more, which was like logic or ethics. But when they were presented this one, that region got stimulated, but so did the emotion region, and just the discomfort that people had viscerally of seizing a person in front of them in their grasp and actively sending them to their death. It brought up other parts of the brain, the emotion center. So maybe that helps explain. All right, so now though, we are programmers. You and I are programmers, and some of us in this room are members of the National Transportation Safety Board, who is writing the rules on this. And there's no emotion stimulation in the brain. It's not an accident that's pending right now. This accident that we're programming for could happen in 7 years. It could happen in 20 years. It can happen tomorrow to people you don't know and have never met before, and so forth. So dispassionately, we are tasked right now to program this car to figure out what to do. Now, look, even as drivers, we do make these, last minute situations, like you're driving down the road and there's someone in the road, a pedestrian, a family of 3, and in order to swerve and miss them, you're either going to swerve one way and hit an oncoming car and kill yourself and them, or you're going to swerve the other way onto the street where there is a single old woman. What do you do? Do you swerve and hit that, single old woman, or to protect that family of 3 that's crossing in front of you, or vice versa, or whatnot in the situations? And all of these things are done in the heat of the moment, and you have to make this call. You don't have time to hit the brakes. But you can program a car where it's not a split-second situation. You can have committee meetings. You can read books on ethics. You can poll people. In fact, MIT did that, and they have polled across countries hundreds of thousands of people on these issues, and interestingly are finding that it is different country by country on how people are voting cars should be programmed in terms of saved and a driver, or how many people. We've got time to do this right now, but not a lot of time, because the programming is happening now for the cars that are about to be coming out. In fact, Teslas are already self-driving, and more cars are about to start coming out. So how should we program the cars in these three situations? And here I want to admit that I'm borrowing from a professor at Emory who spoke at a rabbinic conference I attended in Atlanta a couple years ago. This slide comes from one of his lectures on this topic, and he's really the world authority on this, at least academically. And his name escapes me right now. I think it's Broida, not Broida. Darn it, I could look it up. I should give him credit. But anyway, this drawing comes from his lecture series. So situation A, let's start right here. The self-driving car is zipping down the road when a group of people are jaywalking and walking where they shouldn't be. They are in the path of death. Maybe that, you know what, I shouldn't even ascribe any blame on them. Maybe there was a parade that day and the people took the cones down too soon, whatever. Maybe it's not their fault. But a group of people are in the path of an oncoming car. The oncoming car does not have the time to stop. Does it swerve and hit this person? Let's assume everyone's innocent. Does it hit this person, even though that person, if the car does nothing, would not have been killed? That's conundrum number one. The car needs to be programmed to address this situation. It's either a, it's a 0 or a 1, you either go left, it either avoids or it goes straight. There's not a lot of in between here. It's a binary scenario. Second scenario, the car is driving down a narrow bridge. There's, drop-offs on both sides. There is a pedestrian. Should the car be programmed to self-sacrifice, to go careening into a ditch or off the bridge to spare the life of a single pedestrian? Is this pedestrian's life greater than that of the driver? Or can you assume maybe that the car has multiple people? Maybe you assume the car has 1.7 people. I don't know what you would assume, but do you program the car to go off to the right or to continue to going straight and do nothing? What if it's this situation? Same bridge, death on either side if the car swerves, or cliffs on either side, and so forth. But now there is a cluster of people of varying ages, religions, ethnicities, and races. It's a group of people. Does the car get programmed to swerve off and sacrifice the 1.7 people that we might be assumed to be in the car for the sake of the many that are in the road?
Rabbi, can the car be programmed just to stop?
Oh, obviously the car's programmed to stop, but it's what happens in the case where you come around a bend and it's right there and there's no time to stop. The program is, and here I want to come back to my initial point, autonomous cars stop really, really well. It's one of the best things about them, and they're not distracted, and they're not drunk, and they're not, all of these things. But one of the things is they stop super fast because they see it and respond instantaneously. They also see better, They see farther in advance. They see better at night. They see better in fog. They see better in the rain. They stop. So these are very rare situations. The cars stop and avoid accidents super effectively, and they're only going to get better and better and better with more hours on the road. But in the case where it can't be avoided, how should they be programmed? And then, so in these cases, and let's say most especially this case, let's look at C here. Here's the discussion questions. Should cars be programmed to save the most lives? Utilitarian, Rava, right? Whose blood is greater than another, even at the expense of the driver? Or should the driver be favored? Like Rabbi Akiva says, you have the canteen, you're not a pedestrian. If nothing is done, you would survive, a collision with a pedestrian. Why should you have to give up the canteen, as it were? So do you go utilitarian or the sort of do nothing? Do you pull, should cars be programmed to save the most lives, or should they favor the inhabitants of the car? Second question, should the government set a policy on this, or should every manufacturer determine their own programming of their cars? Should Ford and Chrysler and Tesla, should they each have the freedom to, derive their own, programming, or should it be the government who tells them what to do? This is our last breakout. This one's going to be a short one. Let's go see our friends, same friends again. Go.
Okay, we're joining.
I didn't get a join. I didn't get a join.
Oh, I'll put you in. Sorry, I'll figure out. Why didn't you get a join?
I don't know. We were with Andy.
Breakout room 6.
Breakout room 6.
You were in 6?
Yes,
Bill,
sir.
not joined. I'm going to just move you to... It says you've joined. I don't know what to do.
Wait a second. There's something on the top of my page that I've never.
Hey, we just went to breakout rooms, Jeff.
You want it unmuted?
Well, I don't know. Let's see what's going on.
All righty. All right. So, actually, you know what? I'm going to stop this here. And let's make sure everybody's muted who needs to be. Oh, Janet, we'll mute you for a moment. All right, good. So friends, we are coming now to the end of our program, and we're going to do a little summarizing. Please let me again restate that the self-driving cars are super safe. These are exceptionally rare cases, but it will come up. Now, the question is whether or not there should be government regulation. This, I'm proud to tell you that many people in their various groups, I think, really well articulated the need for government. You could say you need big government or small government, but there are clearly cases where you need government. And if you didn't have government, what you would have is a situation where car manufacturers would be boasting that, look, my car, buy this one, it'll kill 98 people before it kills you, you know, and wouldn't you want that one? I mean, you would want the one, the other one says, look, oh, buy this car, it'll save everyone but you, you know, like you don't want that one. If you leave it up to the manufacturers, they're going to, you know, kind of sort of pander to their buyers who are going to be looking out for number one potentially. So you really do need some kind of regulation. And I would point out that also you need the regulation because sometimes we're not always the most rational and best at our own of what's best for us. So here I want to go back to this situation here. When we're programming a car or buying a car, we picture ourselves being the one in the car. But in this situation, what are the odds in this situation that you're in the car or that you're on the road? The odds are you're one of those people on the road. And don't you want to live in a society, even though you're a driver, and even though you have a self-driving car, you're also a pedestrian sometimes. And wouldn't you want that to be that even though maybe you could have it, your car always protected you, but don't you want to live in a world where the cars out there are not out to get you, to protect the driver? You want a world where when you're in a group celebration looking at 4th of July fireworks, that some autonomous car isn't going to come along that's programmed only to protect the driver, even when, you know, so there is room for government. And I would say this is such a case. And I hope our government and other governments do take the stance that this is a collective concern. Now, back to the issue of the trolley and the self-governing driving cars. It's very interesting to note that MIT has discovered in polling people, I mean, not just silly poll, but like in actually examining people from many different countries, that it is a cultural phenomenon. Different people have been answering that A, B, and C scenario. And here I would like to add to it. I brought it to the confirmation class and the parents. I can't mute myself even though my phone's ringing because I'm talking. I brought it up to my confirmation class and the parents. And on this last question, we actually split up. And the parents went to one side and the kids on the other side, and they discussed whether or not a driver should be favored or should it be always, you know, utilitarian, favoring the most lives. And what fascinated me, surprised me, is that the collective of the parents and the collective of the kids came up with the opposing answer on this question. The kids were almost entirely, unanimously utilitarian. Greater good, most lives saved, always. Doesn't matter if you're a pedestrian or a driver. The parents, majority, though not absolute, about 2/3 majority, said the people in the car should be protected and not giving you know, not programming a car to swerve off the road, the car that wasn't, you know, going to be swerving off the road. It shouldn't get forced off the road to save lives, even if it's a whole group of pedestrians in the road. Now, I've had the time of the last 2 years since I presented this to those groups to reflect on that, that disparity. It seems that the parents were not picturing themselves driving that car alone, but were picturing children-filled car, namely their own children. And they had a very mama bear, papa bear, visceral desire to protect their own family and not get into a car that could potentially swerve off the road to save strangers. It's similar maybe to pushing the guy off the bridge when it's people in your car that you know and they're right there. It's different than popping a switch maybe to save some hypothetical people that you don't really know that are on a track or this track or that track. That's just one guy's theories on why the parents differed from the kids. But it was very interesting. You have Akivas and you have Ravas in the same family. The Jews, people, the Jews. Friends, that brings us to the end of this session. I'm going to invite everyone to stick around. Services this Friday night are going to be a collective service where not only will you see Rabbi Shefrin and the rabbis Glickman, but you're also going to hear a message from Barry Gerber as he becomes the new president of Temple Emanu-El. Normally, this would have been Installation Shabbat, where we bless the new officers. We're going to be blessing the new officers at a later Shabbat, but Barry is going to be giving a message to the congregation, and our Shabbat message will be Barry Gerber's as he ascends to the position as president. That's this Friday night at the 7:15 service. If you like study, join us for Torah study. This Saturday morning will be led by Rabbi Mimi Weiss, assisted by her son, Rabbi Michael Shefrin. That is this Torah study this Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, also by Zoom. All Zoom addresses are found in the weekly Tuesday email. Let me go ahead and hit stop recording. Oh, no, that's not how you do it. Stop recording.